Bonne Foi, Chapter 13. Bella had a much harder time getting back into her clothes than she had getting out of them. Watching her fight a small battle with her jeans was highly amusing. She glared at my chuckles. "You just consider yourself lucky you have it easy," I shrugged. "True, this is still funny though." We sat and talked while we waited for the tow truck. "So, just what do you plan to do when the truck arrives anyway?" Bella asked. "I'm driving you to Forks, obviously, unless you'd like to forego this whole endeavor," I said with a gesture to her lifeless truck. She sighed. "No, I've really got to get my truck fixed now, but there's no need for you to drive to Forks, too. I mean, if you wanted to go back, you'd have to drive so far unless you wanted to stay, which would be fine." I smiled at her rambling. "Well, I'm certainly driving you. There's no way I'm leaving you alone with a stranger. Would you like me to stay?" She bit her lip. "Yes, I'd like that." "Then I'll stay," I concluded. No way I was letting her out of my sight now, not when she'd only been away for 2 hours and still managed to get herself into trouble. "Okay, great," she said, and then she went back to nibbling her lip. My dad will make you sleep on the couch. I think most dads would, probably, and he's going to interrogate you. He is a cop, after all. I can try to take the bullets out of his gun when he's not looking, if that helps." "I think I can handle it," I laughed, imagining a small-town cop trying to take on a vampire. Besides, I had gotten pretty good at this whole boyfriend thing. I doubted I'd have any trouble dealing with her father. She shrugged. "If you're sure, I just thought I'd warn you. I mean, meeting my dad is the last thing you probably want right now." "It's probably inevitable. Don't worry about it." "Okay," she agreed. "So, what were you doing before I called?" I didn't feel like talking about T.S. Eliot with her just now. I could never explain my thoughts on that one, not honestly. "Speaking of that, I was wondering why you didn't just call information when you realized you would need assistance." "I didn't even think of that." She turned very red, then buried her face in her hands. "I feel like a moron." "I wouldn't go to that extreme," I chuckled. "We all have our little lapses, don't we?" She sighed and revealed her red face once more. "I still feel like an idiot." After the promised 2 hours had elapsed since my initial call, the tow truck finally arrived and pulled up nearby. Bella and I stepped out of the car, and when we did, the other man's face lit up in recognition. "Bella! Tyler, damn!" She knew this imbecile. "What are you doing driving a tow truck?" I decided to take a year off and save up some money before college. This is what I wound up doing. Man, when I got the call, I heard it was just some dude. He shot me a sharp glance. "I wasn't expecting to see you." His less than subtle glare reminded Bella of my presence. "Oh, Tyler, this is Edward, my boyfriend. He called for me, then came to get me. Edward, this is Tyler Crowley. We went to high school together." I nodded politely while I surveyed his mind. I saw no history between he and Bella, though he certainly wished there were. "Nice to meet you," he said with distaste. "He's taking you back to Forks, too?" "Yeah, he is." Bella frowned at him. I wondered why. What about him displeased her? It would have given me great enjoyment to know. Tyler finally got down to business, and soon he was off. I was glad to be rid of him. "He a friend of yours?" I asked, back in my car. The engine woke up with a purr, and we sped off toward the south. I was going to overtake this guy in no time. "Not really," Bella said dismissively. "He was actually driving the van that hit me junior year." "What?" My grip tightened on the wheel. How could she be so casual about that? He had evidently repressed that memory. What a jerk. "Yeah, he hit a patch of ice, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He spent the next year or so trying to make it up to me." "Huh." Let her think what she wanted. I doubted that was the primary motivation for him. "Are we going to run into a lot of old friends in Forks?" I asked her. She shrugged. Most of the people I knew in high school went off to college, and there's really not a whole lot going on in Forks, so I doubt we'll get out much. I should go visit where I used to work, though. I promised I would. Okay, that didn't sound so bad. So what will you do all weekend? She shrugged. I'll have to do some cleaning and laundry, I'm sure. Charlie is hopeless. I'll have to do some cooking, too. I'm positive he's going to starve to death without me eventually. Are you sure you want to stay? This might be really boring for you. I don't have anything better to do, I said honestly. My visit to Seattle was far from my mind. Shopping, hunting, there was always time for that. There will be time, Prue Frog whispered to me. But not for Bella. Her time was ticking away. In such a short time she would be gone from college, find a husband, have a career. I had to make the most of her time. If we're lucky, Charlie will want to go fishing, Bella went on, oblivious, innocent. He can't resist going when the weather is nice. And that would leave us with the house to ourselves? I surmised. There was something terribly appealing about the thought of taking her in her childhood bed. I didn't care enough to inspect that fantasy too closely. Yes, we would, she rolled her eyes. Do you think of anything else? On occasion. Bella directed me to her home in Forks, where the tow driver would also be depositing her decrepit truck. Apparently there was only one proper mechanic in Forks, and he charged an arm and a leg, so Bella intended to have her friend Jacob come to look at it. I would be doing everything possible to prevent that. Maybe I could find time to look at it myself tomorrow. Oh, Edward, I didn't think. You won't have any clothes to wear, Bella exclaimed as we crawled down the main street in Forks. The few people we passed all stopped to gawk at my car. I don't mind wearing the same ones, I told her. Unless you're embarrassed to be seen with someone in the same clothes all weekend. Bella laughed. As if I could be embarrassed with you. When we pulled up to her house, a cop cruiser was parked in the driveway. I parked on the curb. Bella looked suddenly nervous. What's the matter? I asked. She was making me nervous. She swallowed. It's just that I've never brought anyone home for my dad to meet before. I'm not exactly sure how he'll react, that's all. I shrugged. I'm sure it won't be that bad. Come on. I left the car, and, finding her still in the passenger seat, opened her door for her. She finally summoned her courage and led the way up to the door. It was unlocked. She went right in. Dad? Bells! The voice came from the room to the right, the living room, I guessed, from the sound of the television. I didn't hear your truck. He stopped dead as he entered the hallway, catching sight of me. Bells? What a horrid nickname that was, really. I scanned his thoughts and found only vague impressions. I tried harder. There was anxiety there, and wariness, but nothing at all concrete. How fascinating and problematic. Like father, like daughter. Dad, Bella started, voice breaking oddly. This is Edward Mason, she said. My truck broke down on the way home, and he came to help me out. The tow truck is going to bring it here. We beat him back. He cleared his throat roughly. Well then, Edward, he gave me a nod. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir, I said conventionally. How do you two know each other? He asked, suspicious. We met outside the library one night, Bella said, with only a moderate blush. I came up with something to cover it. Bella tripped and dropped all her books, I supplied. It was true. Bella glared at me. Yeah, Edward was nice enough to come to my rescue. He's also in my sociology class, she added. Dad, you don't mind if Edward stays for the weekend, do you? He drove all this way. He clearly did mind, but he grunted his assent. Suppose he can sleep on the couch if he doesn't mind it. Thank you, Chief Swan, I said politely, ignoring that he'd been speaking of me like I wasn't there. I admit, I've been eager to see Bella's hometown. Lie. She probably knew it too. That was probably the reason for the odd look she gave me. He frowned. Where did you say you were from, Edward? I didn't. I wanted to laugh at his attempt at subtlety. I'm from Chicago, actually. What brings you out here? He wanted to know, much the same questions his daughter had asked, and I could see where her silent, thoughtful mind had come from. I wondered what her mother was like. I wanted a change of scenery. I don't like the noise of the city. Dad, Bella interrupted, have you eaten? No, I was waiting on you, he replied. Well, why don't you keep an eye out for my truck while I make something? Edward, would you like to help me? I quickly agreed, smiling at the way she handled her father. Clearly, she was used to being the authority, even if her father was the chief of police. Bella set her things down and dragged me into the kitchen, where she began rummaging through cabinets. She huffed in annoyance at what she found. Okay, clearly I'm going to be paying a visit to Safeway as well. What hasn't been eaten is expired. She poked her head into the freezer. Looks like we're having fish. Bella couldn't find much use for my assistance, so mostly I watched her work. She was cute in the kitchen, oddly domestic, but still unique. I could picture her in a small kitchen like this one, preparing dinner for her husband that would come in and wrap his arms around her. He would be ordinary, dull, unworthy. Would she be satisfied with that kind of banal existence? I couldn't really see the appeal, could she? I had to suffer through eating once dinner was done, with Bella and her father both observing me so closely, and me unable to clearly read either's thoughts. I had to be more cautious than I normally would be. I couldn't get away with saying I wasn't hungry this time. It tasted truly horrible, but I decided that Bella was in fact a competent cook by her father's genuine enjoyment. I wished I could eat food. It would simplify so much. This is delicious, Bella, I lied after a manful swallow. Thanks, she blushed. Her father's mind was at once approving and scornful. How I would hate to be a father, how complex it seemed. I took a few bites and got away with pushing my food around to mask my minimal intake. Afterward, I helped Bella clean up, all the better to avoid quality time with her father, though it felt absurdly domestic, and then we passed a long, awkward evening in the living room watching ESPN. No one was paying much attention to the TV. The look on Bella's face told me she was aching to be alone as much as I was. Finally, Charlie went to bed, and Bella set up about making a makeshift bed for me on the couch. I would have liked to tell her it was unnecessary. She lingered there with me, fidgeting. The bathroom is upstairs, second door on the left. My bedroom is just across from it. Is there anything else you need? I'm fine, I told her, watching the nervous twitch of her fingers that I'd never seen before. Are you okay with all this? Of course, she said. I just, wish my dad wasn't so awkward about it. He just wants to protect you. Too bad she was dating a predator. I guess I'd better go up to bed before he comes checking up on us, she sighed. I hope you sleep okay. I'll see you in the morning. She darted forward quickly and pressed a barely there kiss to my lips before she scurried up the stairs. Good night, Bella, I chuckled. Night, she called back. I turned out the light, stripped down to my boxers, and stretched out on the couch in the guise of going to bed. Truly, I was waiting. I had no intention of staying down here all night. As soon as I was sure Charlie was asleep, I would go nosing about the house, Bella's room especially. Okay, so I might be doing a little bit more than snooping once I was up there. In the meantime, I scanned the tiny living room. All of Bella's school photos were on display, providing a timeline of her growth. I watched her go from a child missing her front teeth to a gangly adolescent to the young woman she was now. The transformation was incredible. I saw, too, the old wedding photo and the wife Charlie evidently had not forgotten. Bella's mother. She looked like a spirited woman, pretty, but her daughter had taken her best features and made them better. Having seen more of the kitchen, There was only the upstairs to entertain me, and Charlie was still wide awake. I tried to get comfortable on the lumpy couch. I swear I could feel every spring, and pretended to sleep. What a strange day this had been, a strange month even, but several things had become clear today. I had reacted like an honest-to-goodness boyfriend when Bella had been in trouble, more drastically than a real boyfriend would, from what I'd observed of human nature, and Bella had said I cared. She was right, it seemed. There was no reason why I should have gone after her today, other than that I feared for her and longed for her. The excuse that I required her for my pleasure still held true. She was absolutely essential, irreplaceable. No one could compare to her, but apparently she was taking over in other ways as well, making me think, making me feel. She had too much power for a human, and I didn't want to fight it. I enjoyed being with her. Why should I care about anything else? I was a vampire, wasn't I? My kind were supposed to be hedonistic. I was doing exactly what I was meant to, gratifying my own desires. Just this once, my desire focused on something more than blood, and maybe that wasn't actually a personal failing. Content, I let my thoughts fade, and that was when I caught the sound of heavy snores. Yes. I moved silently up the stairs and paused outside Bella's door. Her heart thumped slowly in sleep. I smiled and eased my way inside. Bella's room was tiny, quaint. She still had a twin bed from childhood, which she was curled up in under a thick quilt. The room was too tidy, unlived in. There was a desk near the window on which there was a dust-free square, where her computer must have been before she took it to school with her. Her bookshelves, too, were mostly bare. There was an old-fashioned rocking chair in the corner that puzzled me. What would Bella need with a rocking chair? The bedroom didn't reveal as much about her as I had hoped, or perhaps I was running out of things to learn. Bella mumbled in her sleep, and I took that as an invitation to join her. Worming my way into her little bed without waking her was a challenge even for me, but I managed. I lay facing her and studied her sleeping face. She looked especially soft in sleep, relaxed as she was. Her half-parted lips drew my attention, beckoning me to come closer, to kiss them. It was as good a way as any to wake her up. She didn't react immediately as my lips touched hers, dragging along the petal-soft skin. I added the brush of my tongue, and she moaned gently. Hoping to elicit a stronger response, I cupped her breasts as I continued to kiss her. She moaned again, and her eyes fluttered open before closing again as she began to kiss me back. Then she tensed suddenly, and I released her. "Edward," she hissed, "what are you doing?" I chuckled. "Continuing to soil your virtue? Relax. Your father is snoring loud enough to wake the dead," I whispered. "If he catches you in here—" "He won't," I promised. "As long as you're quiet, of course." Her eyes narrowed to a glare. "We are not doing that right now." "You don't want to?" I queried, tweaking her stiff nipples idly. "Edward," she growled, "stop that." I sighed. "I suppose if you really want, I can go back to that cold, lonely couch." "You do that," she huffed. "What a cruel mistress you are," I whispered, easing out of the bed once more. I was halfway to the door when she called out a soft, "Wait." I turned around, unable to completely mask my hopefulness. "If you promise to keep it quiet, I suppose we could just this once." "No one caught us in the library," I pointed out, sliding under her blankets once more. "That was a miracle," she said, only half sarcastically. "Have I ever led you astray?" I asked, digging under her sleep shirt for the fun parts. Depends on how you define astray," she countered, palming me through my boxers. "You're definitely not astray right now," I groaned. The hand that wasn't on her breast pushed her panties aside and skimmed through her wet folds. "No foreplay," she sighed, pushing my boxers down. I just want to feel you inside me. By all means, I murmured, sliding inside her. That's perfect, she whispered against my ear. Perfect, I agreed. The next day turned out better than I had dared to hope. Bella's father was indeed lured out to fish while the warmer weather held, and Bella and I were left to our own devices. Our morning involved a long, enjoyable shower, and then Bella decided to show me around the town. Forks was a pitifully small town, so it didn't take long. There was the grocery store, a couple of gas stations, a questionable restaurant, Newton's Outfitters. How did these people survive out here, anyway? Bella instructed me to pull up outside Newton's first. She had worked there during high school and felt obliged to stop in. I followed along compliantly until I caught the scent on the door. Vampire. There was a vampire here in Bella's town. Thank heavens I was here. She might have been killed this weekend. Hopefully the vampire was long gone by now. What was he doing in a camping store anyway? I hovered close to Bella as she approached the counter, scanning the minds in the store for any possible threat. There was the owner, a doctor, a camper. Mrs. Newton! Oh, Bella, it's good to see you again. And who is this young man? This is my boyfriend, Edward. I nodded politely, and Mrs. Newton went on chattering. How is school going, Bella? But wait, the doctor's thoughts weren't quite right. They came too fast, too many at once. I wonder what I should get this time. Mr. Wright's heart rate was elevated. Could be a symptom. Wonder how Alice's vision could come to pass. Esme's garden is coming along nicely. I should get her something new to plant. My God, the doctor was the vampire, buying camping supplies to allay suspicions about why he and the others with him weren't around on sunny days. How could that be? A whole group of them, as I'd seen in his head, going to school, working. How did he handle the blood without exposing himself? And why did an image of my Bella flicker through his head? Oh, Dr. Cullen, I heard Bella gush, and I turned to see a blonde vampire approaching warily. He was very well dressed, polished, and he mimicked the behavior of a human very well. He also had golden eyes like mine. Did he feed from animals too? How had he come to that conclusion? Bella, how are you doing these days? He asked, glancing sharply at me. I saw my thoughts mirrored in his, wondering about me, about what I was doing with Bella, about my diet. Great, Dr. Cullen. I'd like you to meet my boyfriend Edward. She turned to me. Dr. Cullen has spent more time patching me up than I'd like to admit. He had performed her surgery after the accident. I saw the memories in his head, how fragile, how broken she had looked. I didn't like to see it. Nice to meet you, Edward, the doctor said, holding out his hand to shake. I took it cautiously. You too, Dr. Cullen. Bella, Mrs. Newton interrupted, I just remembered you left a book here before you quit. It's back in the office. Oh, okay, Bella turned to me again. I'll be right back. With that, she followed Mrs. Newton away, leaving me alone with the other vampire. Edward, he said seriously to me, too low for a human to overhear. I don't know who you are or what your intentions are, but I've invested a great amount of time and energy keeping Bella Swan alive, and I won't have her hurt by one of my own kind. If anything happens to her, there will be consequences. I saw many things in his thoughts while he spoke. He saw Bella as a daughter. His coven was tightly bonded and would always fight together. The little black-haired one could see the future, and the large male was always eager for a challenge. I understand, I said. Bella traipsed back into the room with her book in hand. You ready to go? Bella asked me. Sure, I agreed, casting one last glance at the vampire. I saw a flash of memory in his head. A woman in a cot, with sweat beading along her forehead. She had green eyes and hair like mine. She was my mother. Her memory had faded, but a flash of intuition told me it was true. How did he know my mother? My head was spinning as we went out to my car. Nothing was as it should be here. Vampires didn't live in groups and eat animals and have regular jobs. And how did this vampire have a memory of my long-dead mother? "Edward, you okay?" Bella asked, which reminded me I should be starting the car. "Yeah," I managed, pulling out to go to our next stop, the grocery store. "What was that about with Dr. Cullen? You were looking at each other funny." "Oh, that," I pretended to laugh it off. "Apparently he feels a strong fatherly affection towards you. Wanted to give me a warning about what would happen if I made you unhappy." Bella laughed. "Yeah, be careful. Break my heart and all of Forks will come get you." I forced a chuckle. "Yeah, with pitchforks and all." Damn, I thought to myself, things just got complicated.